ago, and that the military, quote, has more than enough weapons and ammo to finish Operation Epic Fury. We're going to speak in a little bit with the U.S. ambassador to the UN, Mike Waltz, who will join me here live after he warned his Iranian counterpart to watch what he says. We're going to get into that a bit with the ambassador coming up. Lucas Tomlinson is standing by. He's in Dubai this afternoon. Nate Foy is in Tel Aviv. First, we're going to stop over at the White House. Senior White House correspondent Peter Duthie joining us live from the North Lawn. Hi, Peter.
Martha, officials here are telling us they've got enough weapons to keep the United States homeland safe and to advance military objectives overseas however they want. But Epic Fury is using a lot of bombs and missiles, and so they think it is in everybody's best interest to make more weapons more quickly.
The president will be meeting with defense contractors here at the White House in a few minutes with Secretary Hegseth. This is a pre-scheduled meeting, and the purpose of it is to talk about the president's aggressive and fierce support for rapidly increasing the ability of U.S. manufacturers to produce American-made weapons, which we know are the best in the world.
Another big problem being addressed today, according to Politico. Energy Secretary Chris Wright and other advisors focused on energy policy, including a council led by Interior Secretary Doug Burgum, are getting screened at to find some good news on bringing down prices. One of those named there, Doug Burgum, now offers this.
We're talking 5 days for a tanker of Venezuelan oil to get to through the Gulf of America to our Gulf Coast, to our refineries, which were designed for Venezuelan oil. And the Venezuelan partnership is going to be one of the ways that price goes down at the pump in America.
The war is a big focus here at the White House and for top officials, but it's not the only focus. President Trump is trying to keep to his schedule as much as he can. So next hour, he is still going to host a college roundtable where they're going to talk about paying student athletes possibly too much with some college sports experts, including Nick Saban. Martha?
Another hot topic of great interest. Peter, thank you very much. So CENTCOM says that video shows the United States forces striking, the video we're getting from this conflict is incredible. So that is the downing of yet another this is an Iranian drone carrier craft in the water, the size of a World War II aircraft carrier, we're told. And it was taken out, I think it's the 30th, according to the latest number that we have. I mean, they're basically trying to sink the entire Iranian Navy. So meanwhile, the IDF launched their 15th wave of airstrikes. Watch this. So this scene's obviously in Beirut, where they are taking out Hezbollah sites in Lebanon. Joining me now, correspondent Nate Foy, reporting live from Tel Aviv. Hi, Nate.
Hey, Martha. So despite suffering losses on the battlefield, Iran continues to possess capabilities. Here in Tel Aviv, just about 5 minutes ago, the sirens went off. For the 5th time today, we saw an interceptor rocket over my shoulder. So far today and in other days, Israel's air defense continues to hold strong. Now, President Donald Trump said today that Iran's military has been neutered and that Operation Epic Fury so far has been an absolute success. He put it at a 15 on a scale of 1 to 10. But again, Iran continues to show an offensive capability here in Israel. Now, Israel continues to show that same ability throughout not only Iran, but also Lebanon. Take a look at this video from the southern suburbs of Beirut, where they have been pounding it. Israel took out several Hezbollah command centers and military targets, while Israel and the United States continue striking central and western Iran. They're going after military compounds, weapons depots, and missile launchers. And we're also learning more, Martha, about the cluster munitions that Iran fired at Tel Aviv overnight. They're called deep Hickams. They're incredibly difficult to intercept, but also after they land, it gives an opening to the attacking side because clearing the munitions takes time. The U.S. sent this same weapon to Ukraine in 2023. Meanwhile, U.S. officials say Russia is providing intelligence to Iran about American battle positions. This as the U.S. continues its bomber campaign and, as you mentioned, obliterates Iran's navy. This video shows U.S. forces destroying an Iranian drone carrier as The UK sent additional air defense to the region today, including drone-busting helicopters. Iran has now fired on 12 different countries, and Iran's president, who's part of that interim leadership council, Masoud Pezeshkian, he says that some mediation talks have begun with those countries, but he didn't specify exactly which countries he was referring to.
Yeah.
I'll send it back to you, Martha.
That was interesting from President Pezeshkian. We're not sure, as you say, Nate, what countries he's apparently negotiating with at this point. We're going to dig into that in a little while when we're joined by the UN ambassador, Michael Waltz. Nate, thank you. So with that, we bring in Brett Velikovich, former Army Special Ops Intel analyst and drone expert, founder of Powerus and a Fox News contributor, and Brent Sadler, retired U.S. Navy captain who served for 26 years, including operational tours on nuclear-powered submarines. We've seen some incredible action by subs in this altercation so far. He is now at the Heritage Foundation Senior Research Fellow. Great to have both of you with us, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Brent Sadler, let me start with you. I want to just read this. This is a Truth Social post from President Trump that was on Tuesday. And in it, he said this: at the highest end, we have good supply, but we are not where we want to be. Much additional high-grade weaponry is stored for us in outlying countries. Sleepy Joe Biden spent all of his time and our country's money giving everything to P.T. Barnum, Zelensky, exclamation point of Ukraine, hundreds of billions of dollars worth, and while he gave so much of the super high away and free, he didn't bother to replace it. So he's talking about the high-end good supply. Brent Sadler, your take on the president's post in that regard, what he's talking about, and where you think we stand overall in terms of capability and munitions.
Well, thanks for having me on. And it's actually, the president is right. And for folks like me that have been following this for many years, the need to have a much deeper arsenal in the high-end weapons, mostly the air and missile defense, has been a long-standing problem. We need to start ordering more of these. It's also a capacity question. But for far too long, certainly under President Biden's administration, but it goes back even further, we have not bought in the numbers the weapons that we knew we would need in a major fight. And if we get into a major war that lasts months and years, that's going to test us very quickly on the depth of that arsenal. And we need to actually expand not just what we have in bunkers, but also what we have in the factory floor as well.
So, Brett Velikovich, we've seen a lot of very fascinating drone activities. Some of these one-way unmanned drones are being used for the first time. Big meeting right now at the White House. We're not sure if they have started yet or not. But what do you think is the discussion between these, our highest end defense companies and the president this afternoon? What can be done quickly if needs to be?
Well, I think the discussion is how do we plus up our counter drone defenses to, continue to strike down these drones, because clearly some of them are getting through, obviously more than we wanted to. We're seeing more drones penetrate our defenses than I think expected. We should be really honest with ourselves about that. That brings up, frankly, a larger issue that I've been talking about on this network for years. We have our critical installations around the world have been vulnerable. There are people in some of our own government offices who have failed the American people in purchasing failed equipment. That's why we're seeing some of these shot-hit drones get through. Even one enemy drone getting through our defenses and striking a U.S. embassy overseas is unacceptable. And Martha, something, a cheap $20,000 shot hit forcing us to burn multi-million-dollar interceptors, starting fires currently at oil facilities and U.S. embassies, that's unsustainable math. Marco Rubio said the other day we only make 6 to 7 interceptors per month at the tune of $1 million a piece. That doesn't make sense. He probably doesn't know that there are probably parts of the government acquisition cycle that are still a mess. I mean, I don't know who's in charge of the Department of War's procurement over the last few years to put counter drone systems, but the reality is that we're seeing right now there are gaps, and so we need to buy more systems in the U.S. and start plussing up our forces. And I hope that there's a real discussion at the White House right now about doing that.
All right, we'll talk to the UN ambassador about that as well. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Great to hear from both of you today. So we're monitoring the White House, where President Trump and Secretary of War Hegseth are huddling this hour. UN Ambassador Mike Waltz is here after this tense exchange with his Iranian counterpart at the UN.
I have one word only. I advise to the representative of the United States to be polite.
I'm not going to dignify this with another response, especially as this representative sits here in this body representing a regime that has killed tens of thousands of its own people.
They told him, didn't they? And he needed to be told.
At the time, according to all the intelligence, apparently not thinking that anybody was going to have the guts to target during the day while he was upstairs with these meetings. We all know what happened, and that information is from a senior Israeli official. U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Mike Waltz, is here, but first let's go to correspondent Lucas Tomlinson, who is reporting live from Dubai. Hi, Lucas.
Good afternoon, Martha. The Israeli Air Force says 50 of its fighter jets were used to destroy the bunker of the late Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's secret underground bunker in the heart of Tehran. Here's some drone video to share with you showing the dozens of 2,000-pound bunker-busting bombs that were used in the operation. Now, a spokesman for the Israeli forces says 80% of Iran's air defense systems have been taken out over the past 6 days, clearing a path for those jets, 4 squadrons worth, to fly about 1,000 miles from Israel to Tehran. That's about the same distance as New York to Minneapolis, Martha. The Israeli military providing this illustration of the late Ayatollah's compound, calling it the main headquarters used by Iran's leadership in Tehran. And as you can see, this is a large-scale underground bunker located under several residential neighborhoods in Tehran, the capital, dozens of yards underneath the earth. It contains secret rooms from which Khamenei was used to conduct the fighting against Israel, or he had planned to before he was killed last Saturday. The IDF says the regime's officials continued to use it over the past week because they thought it was impenetrable to Israeli bombs. Now, before he was killed on the first day of the war in a daring daylight attack last Saturday, the Ayatollah had been the leader of Iran since 1989. He lasted through 7 U.S. presidents, including President Trump twice. Khamenei was also the president of Iran during the 80s, during that disastrous Iran-Iraq war. Now, here in Dubai, Martha, we received a missile alert a few hours ago indicating that 9 Iranian ballistic missiles were headed here to the UAE. UAE forces said they took out all 9 of those ballistic missiles, and over 100 drones were fired from Iran here in the UAE earlier today. All but 3 made it through, or all but 3 were shot down, Martha.
Okay. Lucas, thank you very much for your report. President Trump posting on Truth Social, quote, "There will be no deal with Iran except unconditional surrender." After that, and the selection of a great and acceptable leader or leaders, we and many of our wonderful and very brave allies and partners will work tirelessly to bring Iran back from the brink of destruction. He later told Axios, quote, "Unconditional surrender could be that the Iranians announce it, but it could also be that they can't fight any longer because they don't have anyone or anything to fight with." U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Mike Waltz, is here now. Great to have you with us, Ambassador. Thank you very much for joining me. You know, when I hear the phrase unconditional surrender, I think about longtime adversaries that we dealt with in World War II. And FDR used that language at the Casablanca Conference in 1943. He said peace can come to the world only by the total elimination of Japan and Japanese war power. The elimination of German, Japanese, and Italian war power means the unconditional surrender of all of them. And now we have our president calling for this same language with Iran. Your thoughts?
Well, look, it's clearly part of Iran's strategy, Martha, to sow discord, to attack their neighbors, our allies across the Gulf, and try to separate them from Washington by attacking their infrastructure, their ports, their oil and natural gas facilities, even their international airports and otherwise. And it's doing the exact opposite. It is backfiring on Iran. I have met with nearly every ambassador in the Gulf just in the last 48 hours. I've never seen them more unified. I've never seen them more outraged. I've talked to them quite a bit. You know, their population is under attack. And I think you're going to see that unity get more and more solid as the day, more solidified as the days go on.
You know, are they saying, how long is this going to last? How long do we have to, you know, put up with this incoming? Because clearly, many of them were hesitant about getting into this fight initially.
Yeah. Well, I think what you're hearing from them isn't asking us that. It's demanding that of the Iranians.
Right.
Their leaders are talking to the Iranians and saying, what the heck do you think you're doing right now? But we saw fracturing, frankly, around Yemen. We saw some fracturing around Sudan, between some of those countries. And again, they are incredibly unified right now. They're fighting back, they're hitting back, and they stand solidly with us,
doing
and
a great
us with
job
them.
of shooting some of this stuff out of the sky, that's for sure. So that's who Pezeshkian is referring to when he says, I'm talking to other leaders and we're negotiating?
Well, I don't know who he's referring to. I wouldn't trust a thing that comes out of his mouth, frankly. But I can tell you all of these countries are reading Tehran, the Riot Act right now, and you're going to increasingly see them unified at not only in the United Nations, but at the world stage.
Yeah. Speaking of the United Nations, this is the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres. This is what he said. All the unlawful attacks in the Middle East are beyond are causing tremendous suffering and harm to civilians throughout the region and pose a grave risk to the global economy, particularly to vulnerable people. The situation could spiral beyond anyone's control. So who's he talking about? I guess is the question. Is he talking about Iran's unlawful attacks, or is he talking about...
It's a little unclear. I can tell you where the United Nations has been clear. For 20 years, we have had resolution after resolution after resolution. And you heard it just this last weekend when we had an emergency UN Security Council meeting that Iran and this Iranian regime can never have a nuclear weapon. That year after year, the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, they can't have a nuclear bomb. They can't have the means to deliver them, and they cannot have naval assets now that can cut off the world's energy supplies. All of what the UN has been saying now for decades, finally President Trump has said enough, is taking bold and decisive action. I think it's going to prove to be historic. And at the end of the day, he is not a president of endless talk and resolution and strongly worded letter. He said, this is the point I keep making to the council members is this didn't start several days ago. This started in 1979 under the Carter administration, and President Trump is no longer going to kick the can.
So one of the big questions for Iran is whether or not Russia and or China might actually help them out. There's this story this morning about Russia giving them intelligence in terms of U.S. assets and bases and some information that they might have on that. And then just a short time ago on the wires, it says that Pezeshkian, the Iranian president, has held a phone call with Putin to discuss what's going on in the region. What's your reaction to that?
Well, we've seen these kind of marriages of convenience, so to speak, where Iran it has provided Russia its one-way attack drones that they've then used against Ukraine. You've seen some reciprocation from the Russians. But look, I think you're going to see a real fair weather friend here. We saw this during the 12-day war last June when President Trump took that bold and decisive action, that Iran and China backed away, and they need the relationships with the Gulf Arabs way more than they need Iran. And that's what
the president's always said he has a good relationship with Putin, despite obviously the war and the president's desire to see that war end. But is there outreach to say, look, do not dare share intelligence about any of our bases with Iran right now?
I'll leave that kind of outreach to the president and Secretary Rubio, but we take it incredibly seriously.
Yeah. Just Brett Belkovich a moment ago saying that the Shaheds are getting through, the Iranian drones are getting through, and that shouldn't be happening, and that we should have been more on top of this anti-drone warfare.
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
Well, look, I mean, it does make things more difficult. Our systems like Patriot, THAAD, and others are designed for the geometry of a missile or geometry of a rocket. The drones change that. However, you're seeing us deploy lasers. You're seeing the Israelis deploy directed energy weapons. You're seeing us deploy electronic warfare. Secretary Hegseth, I think, has been very effective, and Chairman Dan Kane, at getting out there what we're doing to counter these asymmetric threats.
All right. Well, you have a broad background in all of this, so it's good to have you with us. You're Ambassador Mike Waltz. Thank you very much. Good to see you. So live look now at Beirut just after 10:20 p.m. there as we monitor strikes in the Middle East at this hour. Ben Shapiro joins me after Democrats in Congress failed to stop Operation Epic Fury. They wanted to have a vote. It really was relatively meaningless. There isn't much they can change at this moment. They're calling the president a warmonger. We'll be back with Ben Shapiro after this.
This is an illegal war that is being
Oh, nonsense.
run.
Chris Murphy, shame on you.
In spring.
Keeping it.
In and out.
The Americans and the Israelis are continuing to pound the Iranian regime.
This war has spilled over into new territory.
The amount of firepower over Iran is about to surge dramatically.
America is watching.
All right, let's get you a live look at the Dow this hour. Not a super pretty picture, down about 500 points right now. We are also keeping a close eye on gas prices. According to AAA, the national average hit $3.22 today. That's a 30-cent increase since the strikes in the Middle East began. President Trump telling Reuters he is not concerned about that. Quote, they will drop very rapidly when this is over, and if they rise, they rise. But this is a far more important thing than having gasoline prices go up a little bit. With that, we bring in David Asman, Fox Business anchor, and Dana McDowell, co-host of The Big Money Show and The Bottom Line. Great to have both of you with us. Welcome. Dana, let me start with you. Your reaction to what the president has to say and the dynamic that you're seeing with oil prices and the economy today.
I don't mean to belittle what people will experience when they go to fill up. And if you look at the cost of crude oil today, it topped $90 a barrel. And with oil between 85, and I'm talking about our oil, West Texas Intermediate, which is the contract we follow, with oil at $85 to $90 a barrel, we are looking at nationwide gas prices running $3.50 a gallon to $3.90 a gallon. So that pain will be felt by American drivers. But this is what will be a temporary price shock potentially, and it will cause demand destruction where people maybe drive less. But it's not a supply problem. It's not a supply problem here. It's not a supply problem around the globe. It's just a mobility problem, if you will. That's why the administration decided to say, hey, Russia, you can offload that crude that's on the water on ships to refineries in India, because we don't want to bring harm to India's economy. That being said, I will just repeat what my father would always say. People get upset about gas prices, and he would hold up the food rationing, the coupon book from World War II, and say, this is what we went through when our men and our boys were fighting for our freedom then. And remember your grandfather's Chevy dealership that just went poof overnight because there were no cars, because all automobile manufacturing went for the war effort, and that automobile dealership never returned. So perspective is much needed here.
People went years without, nobody bought a new car for years during the war, and people would typically say, well, when the war's over, we'll do this or we'll do that. But they, understood the big picture importance. David?
Well, to Dagan's point, there is not a supply problem, but the movement now is causing problems with supply. That is to say, Kuwait just announced it's going to be cutting back on its production of oil because it's running out of space. It doesn't have any storage space because they relied on the Strait of Hormuz, which is the cause of all this conflict in terms of getting the oil around. Now, Saudi Arabia, which produces a lot more oil than Kuwait produces, about 3 million barrels per day. Saudi Arabia produces between 10 and 12 million barrels per day. We produce about 14 million barrels a day, just to put it in perspective. Saudi Arabia has options that other oil-producing states don't have. But we just got word from Qatar, which is a relatively small producer, about 1.5 million barrels a day. They say that, of course, they're talking their book. They want prices to go higher because they're selling oil. But they say the price could pop to $150 a barrel if things remain the same in Hormuz. Just to alert people as to what's happening. I mean, people on these ships that take oil across the strait, even though they have protection from the U.S., they have insurance now from the U.S., et cetera, they have sailors on board that are kind of nervous about going through there with all the threats that Iran is throwing at them.
Right, I made a joke that the Qatari minister maybe was auditioning for a job at Goldman Sachs with that kind of oil price call. The number that people are talking about is if the Strait of Hormuz remains closed for 3 to 4 weeks, maybe you're looking at $108 a barrel there. David was mentioning the Saudi Arabian pipeline owned by Saudi Aramco, the major oil company there that runs east to west, where they can transport oil, and that is flowing across and have it loaded onto tankers in the Red Sea. And that's the most important thing.
I mean, we have changed the dynamic over the years to rely less on this avenue through the Strait of Hormuz.
And with Donald Trump, we're producing a lot more. I mean, we are just in the beginning of producing record numbers. So we're close to 14 million barrels per day. I think we could do a lot more than that. Just from the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf of America alone, we could get an extra 2 million barrels per day. And that's very clean burning fuel, and it's very advantageous for all the environmentalists who are worried about it.
The reason it's so critical that Venezuela, Maduro was taken out, and that we, the United States oil companies, have gone into Venezuela is because the production there should be able to, in even 6 months, go up to 1.4 million barrels a day. That is the equivalent of what Iran has been exporting out of its country. So as long as we can safeguard all those other Middle Eastern nations.
And you can see how President Trump is putting these pieces together.
Right, timing is not
Venezuela and potentially Cuba and Iran, and all of this happening right before his meeting with China. I think it's very strategic in terms of loosening up our oil supplies from the south.
And it's not a crisis because it's not electricity, it is not coal, it is not other sources of energy like during the Russia invasion of Ukraine.
Thank you so much, you guys. Great to see you both. As we monitor the White House, where President Trump is holding talks about ramping up weapons production this hour, we're going to take you there, and also more than 50 House Democrats, some of them that you see here on your screen, rejected a declaration to label Iran the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism. We have, basically 50 years of history that supports that title for them. Ben Shapiro, next. Yes, it is not that long ago. Now they suddenly are a little bit tongue-tied and decided that they can't support this. They say it's unnecessary, this designation, because it's already U.S. policy, and that the resolution could be used to justify President Trump's military action against Iran. It passed, regardless of all of this, both the House and the Senate, rejecting a push to stop Operation Epic Fury. Those bills supported by a few Republicans, but mostly by Democrats. Watch.
They don't have a goal, there's no strategic plan, there's no timeline. This terrible decision that they have taken is going to end this presidency.
Does it mean that we have to go to war without, at this point, any actual reason? The president's not giving us a solid reason.
So let's bring in Ben Shapiro, host of the Ben Shapiro Show. Ben, always great to see you. Welcome. Your reaction as you look at that vote and the failure to support that designation in the overwhelming numbers that Democrats supported it not too long ago.
I mean, the obvious thing that's happening here is that Democrats are afraid of the consequences of their own prior views, because the reality is that if you do acknowledge that Iran is the leading state supporter of terrorism, that it was developing a massive stockpile of ballistic missiles and launchers, that it was moving steadily toward the development of a nuclear weapon, and that talks weren't getting anywhere, whether it was Barack Obama or President Trump, the talks were going nowhere. If it turns out that that's the case, then you're left with the conclusion that the president did the right thing. And that, of course, is the thing that Democrats can never say. What President Trump did here is the single most courageous foreign policy move of my lifetime, bar none. And Democrats, I think, frankly, should be ashamed of the way that they have approached this, if they truly believe, as they've said many, many times before, that Iran is a threat in terms of regional threat to allies, including Israel and Saudi Arabia, and now obviously Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, where they've been firing ordnance. And not just Israel, but in many of these nations actually in greater numbers than they've been firing on Israel. If Iran has spread its terror tentacles into places as wide-ranging as Europe and South America and Latin America, and if Iran was never going to give up the pursuit of this sort of stuff, it takes a man with tremendous intestinal fortitude to do what President Trump did. Democrats will never acknowledge that. So instead, they're just going to undercut the premise by pretending that apparently Iran was fine, everything was cool.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, when I look at the Middle East now, it feels like Iran is sort of the only nation that is standing in sort of a holy war, jihad mindset. You look at the changes that have happened post-Abraham Accords around the region, and there's economic interests. There's a lot of other interests that are aligning between Israel and between the Saudis. But this has, as you say, been, the perspective of U.S. presidents for a very long time. And now so many Democrats are turning their back on it. Just look at a quick montage of this. Watch.
We cannot allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon.
We have to figure out how to deal with Iran as the principal state sponsor of terrorism in the world.
You're right. They are a sponsor of terrorism around the world, and we have to address that.
The regime has long sponsored terrorism and threatened our interests. They should be held accountable for their actions.
Iran has American blood on their hands.
A lot of talk, Ben, but as you say, this was a very, very bold action that none of these people were ever willing to do.
Well, the reality is that all of these people wish to pretend that diplomacy is an end rather than a means. And diplomacy is a means, but if that means fails, then you had best have the mailed fist of the United States ready, and only this president had the actual stones to do the thing that needed to be done. And now Democrats are standing there shamefaced because the fact is that the president has done tremendous damage to pretty much all the forward capacities and internal capacities of the Iranian government, and it doesn't look like that's going to stop anytime soon. Beautifully. The president drawing the line today that he wants the Iranian government to deliver its unconditional surrender, him telling Time magazine that he wants a hand in choosing the next leader of Iran, that the next leader of Iran cannot mirror the leadership of the past 5 decades. Again, unbelievably courageous stuff from the president, and the proof is in the pudding. There are a lot of people trying to undermine this war on both the left and now the horseshoe right, and the reality is the tremendous success of the United States military alongside the Israeli military here, it's one of the signal military accomplishments in the last half century of warfare, and the credit for it ought to be laid at the feet of the President of the United States.
Ben Shapiro, listen to his podcast. Thank you so much, Ben. It's always great to have you with us. Good to see you.
Thanks so much.
So President Trump says that after Iran gets finished, he is going to put Secretary of State Marco Rubio in charge of the next mission that is on his list. We've got some new breaking reporting on where that's going to happen, likely next. Iran, an apparent reference to the ongoing Operation Epic Fury, but he says, quote, Cuba is going to fall pretty soon. They want to make a deal so badly. Breaking now from the Wall Street Journal, a federal prosecutor in Florida is looking to build criminal cases against leaders of Cuba's government and Communist Party. The Trump administration used criminal charges as a pretext for the ouster of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. And that has been a successful overturn. And we know that Delcy Rodriguez has had a successful meeting with Doug Burgum, which we talked to him about this morning. So Republican Congressman from New York, Mike Lawler, serves on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and he joins me now. Congressman, great to have you with us today. With regard to Cuba and the history, President Obama really felt that he could work with Cuba in a very different way. This is back in 2016. Watch.
Affirmed that Cuba's destiny will not be decided by the United States or any other nation. The future of Cuba will be decided by Cubans, not by anybody else. What I have said to President Castro is we don't view Cuba as a threat to the United States.
Well, we know how Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, feels about this. He has wanted a free government and freedom for the people of Cuba for a very long time. Your take on the president suggesting this could be next?
I think, Martha, what you're seeing is a president of the United States that is showing leadership and resolve. Someone who is not going to take lightly this unholy alliance that has been allowed to operate between China, Russia, Iran, Venezuela, North Korea, Cuba, and others. And you are seeing the dismantling of it before our very eyes. And I think when you look at what President Trump has been able to accomplish in just 13 plus months, you are seeing these regimes crumble. And the illicit oil trade that has gone on between China and Iran, Iran and Venezuela, Venezuela and Russia, it is collapsing. And that has been the greatest source of funding for all of their illicit activities. And it's why the Cubans right now are in a desperate situation because their relationship with Venezuela is now defunct. Their relationship with Iran and Russia and China is under attack. And so this is a moment in history that I think we will look back upon and see that this was the turn, in the relationship. And, fundamentally, when you look at how Barack Obama and Joe Biden handled these challenges versus how Donald Trump is handling them, it's night and day. Donald Trump is willing to take action, and that is what is forcing the change. Joe Biden and Barack Obama wanted to play patty cake and send money to these countries with the hopes that somehow it would buy them off.
Yeah, there was always a lot of talk about the changes they wanted to see. We are clearly seeing action here, and no matter what side you're on, we're living in extraordinarily consequential times right now in our history that I think a lot of us never thought we would live to see. So it's a fascinating time. Mike Lawler, thank you very much, Congressman. Good to see you as always.
You too.
So coming up, Clay Travis, live at the White House, about to meet with President Trump. He's here to explain the business he is there on next.
I hope you enjoy us bringing
For
you these
exclusive class weaponry.
videos.
And that he is now switching gears now to host this White House roundtable on saving college
Our way to
sports. He's
educate.
moving from one topic to another
As a
this
former
afternoon.
government
On this
teacher.
Friday afternoon, my next guest will be there
And former
says
superintendent of
everyone
education
agrees that
for the
college
Commonwealth of
sports
Kentucky.
is broken. Outkick founder Clay Travis joining us from the White House. Clay, great to have you here, and I know this is something that is very important to President Trump. Here's what he said about it back in December. Watch this.
I think the NIL is a disaster for sports. It's horrible for the Olympics, and I think it's actually horrible for the players. And you're losing all of these great sports.
So name and likeness gave these college athletes the ability to get paid in a number of ways. Clay, your take and what you hope to accomplish there this afternoon.
Well, the president's trying to solve everything all at once, Martha, that he sees that needs fixing. And I think it's a testament to how effective his second term has been when it comes to just trying to address issues. And every college sports fan in America, and I am one of them, and I know you are one of them as well, Martha, recognizes that college sports right now are broken. And President Trump wants to fix them. And some people say, well, what is the role for the federal government? And I could probably do a 2-hour deep dive on all the legal complexities associated with this. But the biggest way to sum it up is without antitrust protection, any rule that's put in place relating to college athletics is subject to challenge in court. And the courts are overwhelmingly saying any restriction on pay, any restriction on eligibility by and large is an antitrust violation. And if you're out there and you're an NFL fan, for instance, or an NBA fan, they have collective bargaining agreements. And when the players bargain with the owners, they get something called a collective bargaining exemption, an antitrust exemption based on the collective bargaining process. And so without players being employees, there's a challenge as to how you put these rules in place. And that is the issue that President Trump and a lot of these college sports leaders are going to be trying to address today. This is the opening salvo, I would say, to what I expect to see as Senate and House action. And they've been very involved in the past in sports leagues when it comes to antitrust, giving college sports universities the ability to make rules and implement regulations that otherwise would be challenged in a court of law. And if that sounds complicated, there you go, Martha.
Thank you. It sounds very complicated. 30 seconds we have left. Is there any way that you can put this genie back in the bottle? I mean, it's hard to imagine how these athletes are going to be like, okay, it's fine, don't pay me, we'll go back to the old way.
That's a great question, and I think the answer is you have to fix the transfer portal. Basically, every athlete is a free agent. That means they can sign with brand new schools every single year. That can't be allowed to continue. It's breaking the fundamental aspects of college athletics. It's fine to be paid. It's not fine to be a free agent every single year. We have to reconcile that dilemma and fix it, and that's what the president's trying to do today at the White House.
All right, just a couple seconds. We're going to close with this very quickly from Lou Holtz as we remember him. This is his speech during the Medal of Honors, Medal of Freedom at the White House. Watch this.
This award, as great as it is, does not define who Lou Holtz is. My beautiful family, my precious wife, my friends, you have determined.
I just want to throw out my socialist talking points and agree with you that
coach of Notre Dame and other places. We lost him this week. 2 seconds just to say goodbye, Clay.
We all love him. He was an icon, not just of coaching, but also media. He is a star of college football. We will miss him for a long time to come.
Clay Travis.
Live from Texas, this is the Will Cain Show, and this is a Fox News alert. Any moment, President Trump is set to host a roundtable on the future of college sports, and like his soccer event yesterday, there will be some major figures present. Legendary college football coaches like Nick Saban and Urban Meyer, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver, Texas Tech booster Cody Campbell, and golf legend Tiger Woods, just to name a few. It comes as college sports are at a crossroads. The current landscape is mired in chaos over name, image, and likeness, antitrust lawsuits, and plenty of controversy. Quite a bit of money is at stake. Top earners in college football, like Texas quarterback Arch Manning, reportedly get something like $6.8 million a year. The rest of the top 5 highest valued players rake in anywhere north of $4 million each. So when that event kicks off, we're going to bring it to you live. But right now, we start with a Fox News alert. Operation Epic Fury shifting into its next phase. Today, President Trump says he's seeking Iran's unconditional surrender, telling Axios that could simply mean the regime can't fight any longer. Tomorrow, he's set to attend the dignified transfer of the 6 fallen service members when they arrive at Dover Air Force Base. Meantime, the administration says it has plenty of weapons at its disposal. The president just wrapping a meeting up with these major defense firms and said via Truth Social that it was a very good meeting. He wrote, they have agreed to quadruple production of the exquisite class weaponry, and that we want to reach as rapidly as possible the highest levels of quantity expansion that began 3 months prior to the meeting. And plants in production of many of these weapons already are underway. We have virtually unlimited supply of medium and upper medium grade munitions, which we are using as an example in Iran and recently used in Venezuela. Regardless, however, we have also increased orders at these levels. There will be another meeting in 2 months. Meanwhile, overnight, Israeli Air Force fighter jets dismantling the Ayatollah's underground bunker, which sat beneath the Iranian regime's leadership compound in Tehran. U.S. Central Command confirming it has now sunk more than 30 Iranian ships so far in the operation. CENTCOM says this operation isn't just about leveling Iran's missile industrial base, but it's also about destroying Iran's ability to rebuild. To that end, dozens of 2,000-pound penetrator bombs have been dropped on its launchers, and about 200 targets have been struck in just the past 72 hours. Take a look at these brand new side-by-side satellite images showing the before and after of a damaged Iranian military facility. The Secretary of War says this is just a start.
When we say more to come, it's more fighter squadrons, it's more capabilities, it's more defensive capabilities, and it's more bomber pulses more frequently. The amount of firepower over Iran and over Tehran is about to surge dramatically.
So U.S. firepower surges, and correspondingly, Iran's destroyed. Since day one, missile attacks from Iran are down 90%. Drone attacks down 83%. 80% of Iran's air defense system destroyed. And over 60% of its ballistic missile launchers, no more. As Iran limps along, the embattled regime is turning to allies to provide intel. According to the Washington Post, Since the war began Saturday, Russia has passed Iran the location of U.S. military assets, including warships and aircrafts, said 3 officials who spoke on the condition of anonymity because of the matter's sensitivity. But Iran's friends are few and far between. Since the start of the operation on Sunday, Iran has lashed out at 12 countries in the region. That includes Israel, Qatar, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates. And that is where you will find Fox News' correspondent, Lucas Tomlinson, who on the ground in Dubai, who has the latest. Lucas.
Well, despite the progress that you just cited, attacks against this country continue. But Emirates Airlines says because things have gotten better, it hopes to return to a full schedule in the coming days. The Emirati military says earlier today, Iran launched 9 ballistic missiles here at the UAE. All were shot down. Over 100 drones were launched, and all but 3 have been shot down. And for Americans trying to get out of the country, the first evacuation flight has arrived in JFK.
Just scary, just because like they send an alert on your phone saying missiles, like hide, like be away from windows and things like that. So it's kind of scary because we've never experienced something like that.
How difficult was it to get a flight out?
Impossible. Tough to do communication. I know what their tactic was. I know there was that meeting. They want to make sure they hit it. You can't give that type of warning out if you don't have that attack.
It's a pretty astute observation there, Will. If the warnings had gone out sooner, it might have compromised the operations to kill the Ayatollah and other senior leaders. Now, here in Dubai, many people are not afraid of the war across the Persian Gulf that is now stretched for 6 days. The Dubai Mall, the largest in the world, complete with a giant fish tank and all your big brands, Will, like Rolex. It was pretty packed earlier. Now, here's flight trackers showing all the airliners avoiding the Persian Gulf. There have been 23,000 canceled flights throughout the Middle East since the war started. The Iran war is now jeopardizing the $12 trillion global travel industry. And after a few hotels were hit here at the beginning of the war, again, more than 90% of Iran's incoming ballistic missiles and drones have been shot down. Some of the occupancy at the hotels is very low. Some at 60%. Some of it is down. The hotels are down to 1% occupancy rate.
Wow. Incredible information all around. Thank you so much, Lucas Tomlinson. Meanwhile, back here at home, President Trump tomorrow is set to host the leaders of 12 nations in Florida to talk narco-terrorism and immigration. The administration dubbing it the Shield of America Summit. Now, that may sound familiar because yesterday, Trump announced outgoing DHS Secretary Kristi Noem will be a special envoy of the group after replacing her at Homeland Security with Senator Mark Wayne Mullen. And it was reportedly the DHS TV ad that was the key factor that led to her ousting. That staggering price tag was brought up in a combative Senate hearing this week.
And you're saying that you're testifying that President Trump approved this ahead of time? Is that my understanding?
We had conversations about making sure that we were telling people.
No, ma'am. I'm asking you, sorry to interrupt, but the president approved ahead of time you spending $220 million running TV ads across the country in which you are featured prominently.
Yes, sir. We went through the legal processes, did it correctly, worked with OMB. Yes.
He did?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
The man behind that question joins me now. It's Louisiana Republican Senator John Kennedy. Senator, it's always great to see you. Thanks for being with us here today from Louisiana.
Thank you.
Reporting is that you talked to the White House before that questioning. I'm curious how that all came together to talk to the secretary about the price tag of that ad.
Well, there's nothing extraordinary about what I did. There's nothing mysterious about what I did. I did my job as a senator. I'm very fond of the secretary. I congratulated her at the hearing, and I was sincere in my congratulations about executing the president's policy and securing the southern border. I have been concerned, though, as have other senators who have chosen not to speak out. I've been concerned about the fact that we have managerial problems at the department for a while that are distracting from the president's and our agenda. And I I knew before the hearing I had a list of 8 issues I wanted to bring up with the secretary. I only got to 2. I don't want to overstate this business about calling the White House. I called the White House 2 days before. I had a very brief conversation and just said, look, folks, I just want you to know I'm going to ask some tough questions. I didn't tell them the questions. We didn't talk at length about it. They said, okay, you know, do your job, no big deal. I did my job as a senator. And one of the things I asked the secretary about was the fact that she spent $250 million putting ads out across America, $250 million, in which she was prominently displayed. They looked a great deal like political ads. And I found that breathtaking. And when I see what I perceive to be spending porn, I don't care who does it. I'm going to call it out. I'm pretty cheap when it comes to taxpayer money. I squeak when I walk. And that's what happened. It also came out, the secretary denied it, that these were no bid contracts, and then apparently some of them did not go to people whose names she got off ZipRecruiter. They went to political friends. And we talked about that. And I was stunned when she answered categorically that the president approved every single bit of it. Later that day, I got a call from President Trump. He was mad as a mama wasp. He said, Kennedy, I hope you understand that I had nothing to do with this. And I said, well, I do believe you, Mr. President. He was not happy. It was clear to me after that conversation that the secretary's time at the department was limited. That to be blunt, she was dead as fried chicken. And we talked about a few names that he might consider. And then what happened. It's not personal. But President Trump was very irritated that the secretary had seemed to blame this on him.
Senator, interesting, you know, that you had concerns about managerial issues at DHS, and there were concerns you said were shared by several other senators who did not choose to speak out, and you did. Why didn't we hear from other senators?
Well, I can't speak for them. I play outside the pocket. I will never completely fit in, which I consider to be one of my best qualities. I'm very frank. Sometimes some people might think to a fault. I have the right to remain silent, not the ability. That's my job as a senator. And I'm not the only one that has these concerns. And the White House has had some concerns for a while. Well, it's not personal. I'm very fond of Christie. But the problems, and many more are going to be discussed, at the department were distracting from our agenda and the president's agenda. Immigration used to be our strongest issue. It's clearly not right now.
And there's plenty of objective metrics that it should be a strong issue for this administration when you consider self-deportation, the border crisis. It's been an absolute victory on so many fronts. So I understand the distraction from the public.
And it was the money. It was the money. $250 million on television ads that really looked like political ads.
Let me ask you, Senator, really quickly about your friends across the aisle, both in the House and the Senate. And they are all suggesting that, you know, this is not enough. The firing of Kristi Noem is not enough. It will not lead to the funding of DHS. They want a change in policy. And I know that I'm packaging 2 issues into one when I ask you this, but it's pretty shocking as well to see Democrats yesterday in the House, 53 of them, oppose a reaffirmation that Iran is the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism.
Well, many of my Democratic friends are weak. We're in a bar fight. They want to quote Socrates. They in their heart, I think, know that President Trump is doing the right thing with respect to Iran. He had no choice. He didn't start a war. He's trying to end the war there. We've been at war with Iran for a while. Most of my Democratic friends are controlled by the Karen wing of their party. And the Karen wing of their party is the wing that gave us defund the police. We know how that vampire movie turned out. Now their mantra is defund ICE. And many, not all, but many of my Democratic friends are scared of the Karen wing. And that's what's driving this. That's why we can't put together a budget for Homeland Security. Our budget for Homeland Security has already been approved by the Democrats. All the Democrats signed off on it. And then all of a sudden they unsigned off on it. They said, we want to make ICE an issue. And what they ultimately want to do is defund ICE, because the Karen wing of the party wants to defund ICE. And that's not going to happen during your or my natural lifetime. Legal immigration is legal, the American people support it. But illegal immigration is illegal. These immigration statutes are not some second-tier laws where there are no consequences if you break them. They need to be enforced. How you enforce them matters. They should be enforced in accordance with equal protection and due process and the reasonable suspicion standards of Terry v. Ohio. And yes, people have the right to protest. They don't have the right to protest violently. This is all politics. Well, yes. You know that.
Well, Senator, keep playing outside the pocket. It led Roger Staubach to the Hall of Fame. Thank you for being with us here today.
Thanks, my friend.
All right, before we go, let's do a quick check on the markets, where all three major indexes today closed in the red, in part because a February employment report is putting pressure on stocks. The economy lost 92,000 jobs last month. That is below expectations. Coming up, Operation Epic Fury strikes the Iranian regime, but the threat of that regime and its resilience and how it's embedded in Iran reaches far beyond the Ayatollah, far beyond the IRGC, and we'll break down the players on the ground in Iran. Over at the Wall, next.
Bankroll by
Announced they agreed to quadruple weapons production, and they'll meet again in 2 months. The president also addressing the surge in oil prices, saying it's temporary. He reiterated that prices would come down once there's a wrap-up of Operation Epic Fury. The IDF striking the Ayatollah's underground bunker overnight. U.S. also striking more than 3,000 Iranian targets in the last week and damaging or destroying 43 IRGC Navy ships. President Trump says it's time for the Iranian forces to stand down.
And I'm once again calling on all members of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, the military, and the police to lay down their arms. They're only going to be killed. And now is the time to stand up for the Iranian people and help take back your country.
But Iran is likely far from regime change.
I think we're very far from regime change. There's a lot of talk about this phrase across the region, but Iran built its government and military structure for a war like this, and they do have support in many parts of Iran. It's a large country of 90 million people. But
to Trey Ying's point, this is a hardened system. It is built to survive pressure. There are plenty of pro-regime forces in Iran that we can break down and should break down. Over at the Wall, who actually holds the power in Iran? Well, the real power center, the real military and police power center in Iran, of course you've heard of it, is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, also known as the IRGC. They were founded in 1979 after the revolution. They control Iran's missiles and intelligence. They also see and oversee internal crackdowns. They are a major force in Iran's economy, and the United States has designated them as a terror group. Then there is Iran's regular military, the Artesh, Army, Navy, Air Force. It defends the borders, but not as powerful as the IRGC. And then there is street level, the Basij Resistance Force. It's volunteer, it's paramilitary. under the IRGC's control, cracks down on protests when you see them in the street, and enforces the morality laws in Iran. They're all over the cities and towns. Now, all of these forces answered to the supreme leader. So it's not necessarily about just one person, especially when that one person, the Ayatollah, is gone. It's about the system. So joining me now is former CIA case officer and senior fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, Ruel Mark Garrett. Ruel, I'd love to talk about each of these groups with you in just one moment, but with the note that they all do answer to the supreme leader, who do they answer to when there is no supreme leader? There is no Council of 50 that have been eliminated by the United States and Israel.
On the local level. And one of the reasons that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and particularly the Basij, are hard to kill is they are fairly dispersed throughout the entire country, and they have a localized chain of command. So if you decapitate and kill the senior officers, and a lot of them have died, they still have officers at a local level who will continue to do what they have done in the past.
Would the idea, be to decapitate to a level until you get to basically abandonment or total disorganization of these forces? So at what level can you strike to where you no longer have the will to fight?
That's an excellent question. I mean, the Israelis have drawn up a targeting list, a very tactical targeting list against the Revolutionary Guard Corps. Hitting those individuals is hard, though, because obviously we've lost the element of surprise. They're not going to be at military bases. They're dispersed in the population. So it's going to be, I think, very challenging to go after those localized commanders. I mean, it's early in the game to know the level of damage, the command and control that has been put out of action by our bombing campaign. I suspect it's extensive, but it's going to take some time for us to get a better appreciation of whether we've created any type of internecine strife within the security services. I think the Guard Corps and the Basij will hold. But again, both of them combined together, the deeply integrated. They do have mobile units that can move across the country, but those units are not numerous. So if you started having problems in Iran, nationwide protests again, then it could become challenging quite quickly, but we just don't know whether after what we saw in January, where a lot of people died, whether we're going to see those protests erupt again.
Right, tens of thousands of people killed by some of these groups we just highlighted in a protest in January. Last question for you, Ro. So not just about disorganization and leadership, but I would assume, and you're the one with the expertise, that among these groups, you're going to have different levels of commitment to the cause. Whether or not that's the Basij or the Artesh, the IRGC, some will be there till the very end, till the bitter end. Some will run for the hills the minute that it looks like it's a threat to their existence. Some are integrated into the streets and the neighborhoods and the society. Some are a more formalized structure. Can you quickly explain to me the difference in these three groups?
Well, I think any of those in the Guard Corps and the Basij in particular that engaged in the suppression of the demonstrations in January and killed all those people are in it for good. I mean, after those types of crimes, there is no forgiveness. That doesn't mean that elsewhere you might have second thoughts if you started to see massive demonstrations again that could challenge the integrity of these security services. So it's possible. But I do think that because of what happened in January, those individuals who participated in that bloodshed are going to hang tough and will go down with the ship.
All right. Excellent analysis. Thank you for that, Ruel Mark Garrett. Thanks for being with us.
My pleasure.
All right, right now, President Trump is hosting a roundtable on the future of college sports at the White House. There's a lot of big names in the room: Tiger Woods, Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, our own Clay Travis. Let's listen in.
It's crazy. But only Congress now, it looks like, can deliver a permanent fix. So, Speaker, you and John and everybody else, including Democrats that are represented very strongly, we can hopefully get it done. Federal legislation must allow college athletic programs to set common sense rules, simple common sense rules, without endless litigation, and establish a fair name, image, and likeness standard that eliminates the patchwork of conflicting state laws. That's the other problem. All of these colleges, they're all in different states and all the laws are different. So you got laws that are totally different. Some one way, some an entirely different way. While allowing the full spectrum of college athletic programs to thrive. It should thrive.
Stay on.
If Congress does not take action fast, it could destroy college sports and destroy the colleges that play these sports. They'll be destroyed. They'll be going bankrupt. Everyone, and so many of them. No other nation in the world has built a system that develops champions in classrooms and on the field, producing Olympic heroes, professional legends, and the leaders of tomorrow all at once. I thought the system of scholarships was great. What do I know? But I thought it was great. And just one of those things. I was with Nick Saban the other day, and you know, his timing is exquisite. He played and he won and won and won, and when he saw this thing, he said, I'm gonna get out of, I'm not doing this anymore. He's around here someplace. Where's Nick? Where are you, Nick? Right? No, he doesn't admit this. I said, how come you left just, he didn't want to go through one season? Because there's no better mind at this than that man. And he looked and he said, what a shame, what a shame. And he's going to speak about it. And I think you have some very constructive ideas, Nick. I think so. No other nation in the world has built a system like this. It's so good, and we've thrown it right out the window. And I'd like to see you go back to something maybe resembling that, and maybe pay for each player. Not such crazy pay, but just pay for each player. With every player, maybe the quarterback and the third string lineman making the same. But you're going to tell us about it, and we're going to try and get it passed. Our goal is not to go back to the days where student athletes were never allowed to receive any compensation. Although, not the worst idea, but I think a lot of people would overrule me on that. But we must pass reforms that protect the cherished American tradition of college athletics for future generations. So I look forward to hearing from a lot of you. And I think a few of you are going to say a few words, and then we'll get to some ideas. And I don't know, maybe by the end of a long session, if we need it, I'm here as long as you need me. They came to me, they said, you're the only one that can do it. I said, oh, thank you very much. I said, it's really because I'm president, okay, to be honest. But we have certain abilities, and we'll see if we can get it done. So I'll ask in this order. Marco, you'll say a few words, and then Speaker Johnson, Randy Levine, Nick Saban, Charlie Baker, the Governor Ron DeSantis, and Greg Sankey, Sarah Hirschland, and Pete Bavacqua. And they'll go pretty quickly, and then we'll hear from some of the people, and we may have something come up that's somewhat of a miracle. There's an idea out there, and somehow it's going to have to be arrived at, because there's no way this system will allow colleges to, in my opinion, will allow schools to live financially. It's not going to happen. So if I could, I'll ask Marco, you can start, and then Speaker, and then we'll go through the list, and then we'll take some ideas or questions. All right? Thank you very much, Marco.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'll be very brief. The first is, I think you've already touched on, and that is what a unique institution college athletics is to the United States. Very few countries in the world actually have something like what we have. And it's not just unique, it's really important. A lot of people don't see some of the aspects of it that are so positive. The first is the student-athlete experience. There are literally thousands and thousands of young Americans who are going to graduate this year with not just degrees, but advanced degrees, and athletics made that possible. And the athletic support and the academic support that they're receiving from these schools is extraordinary. So there are kids that literally would not have gone to college or may not have considered it, and certainly not the advanced degrees, without the help that this provides. Also the development of the individual that student athletics provides. I mean, look, if you can show up at 6 a.m. in the morning every day for a lift, you're learning one of the most important lessons in life. 95% of life is showing up where you're supposed to be on time. These are extraordinary lessons that people are gaining. Two more things that people don't think about: unity. Few things in America unify us anymore, and one of the things that does is college athletics. In particular, I can just, the experience of a Saturday, and I was about to say a Saturday in the South, but I don't want to discriminate against the other conferences. I'm sure it's true there too, where communities get together and people don't agree on anything else. except that they want that home team on the field to win. And it's one of the few unifying experiences we have as a country, and it's so critical. And the last you touched on as well, Mr. President, this is the feeder program for our Olympic teams. Without it, there is no feeder program. Other countries have structured it differently, but the way we have it in our country is so unique in that way. We all know the challenges, and what this system now needs is a system of rules and regulations, of guardrails, so that everyone is operating under the same rules. And it's difficult to do because it's moving very fast, but you've got the right people in the room here, Mr. President, and the right leadership. So thank you for caring about this, because it truly is important for the country and for millions of Americans who are fans, and thousands of families who have student athletes in their family who have experienced the system or are going through it now. So thank you.
And Marco has a conflict of interest that he didn't reveal, which is a very serious charge. Could be a criminal charge, actually, because his son is a very good player for a very good college and makes money with NIL. So there's a serious conflict of interest. But we'll take it. We waive his conflict, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's an honor to be here with so many of the all-time greats. It's a treat for us, members of Congress. There's many of them around the table, and they're happy to be working on the issue with you and for you. I would say, people often say that Speaker of the House is the most stressful job in the world, but then I think of SEC football coaches because they got to win every Saturday night, and my friends who are in those positions, I have a lot of sympathy for. I want to commend President Trump for his extraordinary leadership, and he leads on this important and complex issue as he does all others. He sees a problem, he wants us to solve it, and he assembles the right people to get that done, and I think he really is the only figure on the planet who could do that. So I thank you for that, Mr. President, getting everybody together. One more issue that we'll tackle. I'm a double alum from LSU, undergrad and law school, so I bleed purple and gold, and we talk a lot about college athletics down where I'm from. It's a big thing, but the whole country cares deeply about it because it's part of Americana, as Marco was saying. It's part of who we are as a country, and it's so important, and we have to navigate through these unprecedented waters together. I'm glad there's some really smart people who are working on that. Mr. President, Congress does need to act quickly because it's getting out of hand, and I think everybody here recognizes that. I want you to know the House has been working very deliberately and I think very effectively on this. We've done a lot of good work, and many of you are familiar with the SCORE Act. We passed a important procedural hurdle in December. We're right on the verge of passage in the House, and we now think we have the votes to do that. But that's why this meeting is so timely, because we want to have the conversation today and in the days that follow, because we want to make sure that we get it right. It's a bipartisan product. It has broad support in the House. We believe we'll have every Republican now, and we have a double-digit support of at least Democrats. It is bipartisan. A lot of good work's gone into that to get it there, and we think it may be the vehicle to get us to the next phase of this and this essential conversation. But the next step is preparing that legislation for final passage. So I was talking with Randy and many of you who are leading on this. This is a very important and timely conversation that we'll have today, and I said in the days that follow. We're encouraged to see all of you, the experts who know this issue better than anybody in the country, willing to put your time and effort into it and provide feedback, because we want the final product to be the best it can be. We want to accomplish the necessary ends, and we think we're very close. Everybody here wants to see this American institution succeed, and we have that opportunity within our grasp, and we want to make sure that the solution we develop actually works for student athletes who are at the heart of this, and that's who we care about so much. And we know that the foundation of any good deal begins with getting the right people in the right room, and this is the right room, and this is historic, and no one knows better than the man who literally wrote the book on it, and that's President Trump. And so I want to thank you for assembling us, Mr. President, and we look forward to the discussion. I yield back.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President, for putting this group together. Leading up to this, wherever I would go, because I had an interest in this, both professionally what the Yankees have done and my experience on board of directors of various colleges, everybody would say over and over again, this thing is failing bad, and it's like a hamster on a wheel. It kept spinning on the wheel but never getting off. It was never done. And they told me, please talk to the president, because he's the only person who will convene a group like this in order to reach a consensus to get it done. And he agreed to do it. But he said to me, if I'm going to do it, it has to be bipartisan. And he asked me and the speaker and everybody else to make sure it is bipartisan. And it is. We have people from both parties here, and that's what has to happen. So we put this group together. Why did we put this group together? Because it's representative of the people who know the best on how to solve this issue. We have college presidents who've been living with this from all over the country. We have some of the finest athletic directors who have been pioneers in this area. We have professional sports executives. Why do we have them in the room? The answer is, as Commissioner Silva would tell you, or Hall of Famer Lou Lamorello, these issues have been in professional sports for a long time. We have a lot of experience. I negotiated the first revenue sharing agreement in baseball. Caps, revenue sharing, distribution, all of those things are what we live with every single day. So maybe we can share our experience and transport it here as long as it's in the context of college sports. There's one group that is missing, but they won't be missing from the final product, and that's the student athletes themselves. This group, as we move on, you can be assured we'll be talking to the student athletes and all their representatives to make sure their voices is clearly heard. You know, time is of the essence. People have told me they've been to Congress 15, 16, 17 times. One group goes in, the other group goes in, and nothing seems to get done. Time is of the essence. Besides the numbers the president talked about, I heard a story from one of the great professional athletes on the Yankees, one of our great players yesterday. And he went to a great university, and he said to me, "Thank you for doing this, because every day I got asked for more money for NILs, every single day." And what happened is I gave money for an NIL for a quarterback who left the next year. Meanwhile, a friend of mine, daughter is on the rowing team, and she lost her scholarship, and she's an Olympic hopeful, and now she has to pay her own way. That's just not right. It's really not right, and has to be fixed. So, Mr. President, thank you for bringing this group together. I think they're really, just for discussion, we'll hear from everybody. I think they're really two things to add on to what the speaker said that have to be done. One, there has to be an antitrust exemption, because everyone in the room has to be able to talk to each other, all the conferences, the schools, the presidents, everybody, without getting sued. That includes the kids. They have to be involved in these negotiations, the student athletes. And there has to be an entity that's set up by the people who are going to administer this, run this, that are empowered by the legislation to handle all the issues the president spoke about. And we're all here to support that, to help that, and to make sure that it's just not business as usual. Just an idea I have is maybe that antitrust exemption lasts for 2 years to make sure that these rules and everything are really being enforced. And if they're not, we go back to square one. It'll give the Congress oversight, give the president oversight, but it's time to move. And Mr. President, I couldn't agree with you more. Thanks to your leadership, we got to move this really, really fast. We have ESPN and Fox here. They're probably the biggest payers in this entire thing, and the fact that they're here and their voice is heard is great. So, Mr. President, only you could pull this off, and we're grateful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Randy. And Nick Saban, please.
Thank you, Mr. President, for the chance and the opportunity to be here to speak with you today, but I just want everybody to know that I'm just a football coach. I spent my life when we had the ball trying to get a first down, when they had the ball trying to get off the field on third down. So this is an unlikely position for me to be in to speak to such a distinguished group of people. Thank you. But I come here today with a question. What are the guiding principles for the future of college athletics? All athletics. I'm talking about football, basketball, Olympic sports, revenue, non-revenue, it doesn't matter. You know, my goal as a coach for my players, for our players, was to help them be more successful in life, that we would create an atmosphere and environment that would help them through personal development, academic support, 668 degrees and 17 years at Alabama, and help them develop a career as a football player. That was our goal, so that they were creating value in life and we were preparing them for their future past athletics. So what happened? You know, in this current system that we have, that became impossible to do because people, instead of making decisions about creating value for their future, they were making decisions about how much money could they make at whichever school they could go to or transfer to. So I think we have a challenge here today about the ramifications of this current system on how it helps players be successful in their future and how we can impact and create a system that will help and preserve the opportunity for student athletes to be able to have success in their future beyond athletics. So we need to develop an effective system of revenue sharing, authentic name, image, and likeness, authentic being you have marketing value, which now we have collectives, which just create opportunities, which just become pay for play. Eligibility issues where we have guys playing 6, 7, and 8 years. So you have 25 and 26-year-old people playing against 18 and 19-year-olds, which is not healthy. Transfer rules, we have over 4,000 people in the portal. Fans don't like it, support groups don't like it. It's not really healthy for players in graduation to transfer several times in your career. You really put yourself in a pickle in terms of your ability to graduate. So I think we need to come up with a system, and we obviously have to do it with the president's leadership and also with Congress probably, whether it's antitrust legislation or whatever it is, to allow student athletes in all sports, including women's and Olympic sports, to enhance their quality of life while going to college, but still provide opportunity to advance themselves beyond their athletic career, which is what the philosophy of college athletics and getting a college education has always been about. And how much does anybody talk about getting an education anymore? Nobody talks about it at all, which is the most important thing any of these student athletes can do in terms of enhancing their future. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nick. Charlie Baker.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. I especially want to thank you for putting me in the lineup after the most legendary college football coach of all time. And I really want to thank you for your interest in this issue and your commitment to it. And I also want to thank you for the work that your administration has done on a number of different issues, working with our team and with many members of the folks who are in this room today. You know, today there are more kids playing college sports than at any time in our nation's history. There's 556,000 student athletes across all 3 divisions playing on behalf of 1,100 schools. And those 1,100 schools are second only to the United States of America in terms of the amount of financial assistance they make available to those student athletes. It's over $4 billion. That's also the biggest number we've ever invested as a community in the student athletes who attend our schools. There is a lot that is right with college sports, and anybody who watched the Women's Olympic Championship game between Canada and the United States would know that, among other things, all of the players on both of those teams were former college student athletes. All 46 of them from both teams that played in that championship final. Women's sports has grown dramatically. The visibility of women's sports, the viewership of women's sports, the attendance of women's sports, the investments in women's sports have all gone dramatically up over the course of the past 10 years or so. And if you talk to almost anybody who follows youth sports, they'll tell you that the growth in youth sports on the women's side continues to be profound. But that said, everything everybody has said about the challenges we face at this particular point in time is true. And I want to give a special thanks to Speaker Johnson and to Leader Scalise for the work that they've done, you know, to use a sports analogy, carrying the ball on behalf of the SCORE Act in the House chamber over the course of this year. It deals with the rules issue, it deals with the agents issue, it deals with some of the financial issues, it deals with the equity question, it deals with a wide variety of the issues that are challenging for so many in the college sports space these days. And the final thing I'll just say, we have, I talk to a lot of people who are connected in one way or another to college sports, both in this country and around the world. because they have children who attend college here in the U.S. And over and over and over again, the thing I constantly hear is there's nothing like college sports anywhere else in the world. And you are so lucky to live in a country where you have a system that works for young people the way this one works for young people here. So I'm deeply grateful for your commitment to this issue. I'm thrilled by the folks you've managed to put around this table. I agree with others who said there's probably nobody else who could do that. And college sports was a great thing for me and my kids and my wife and so many I know a lot of kids who wouldn't have graduated from high school, much less gone to and graduated from college if it wasn't for college sports. It's a truly unique American jewel, and we should do all we possibly can to ensure its success for the next generation and the generations after that. So thank you again for having us all here today.
Thank you, Charlie. You're doing a great job. Appreciate it. Ron, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, for doing this. I mean, you have pedal to the metal on so many different issues, from national security to border to energy, and you're not taking the pedal off any of that. And you could be forgiven to say college sports is important, but your plate's full, and you just added it to all the other things that you're doing. And I thank you for that, because this would not get done without your leadership. No one else could get this group together. No one else could work with Congress to be able to do it. And so I appreciate it. It's important to a lot of people.
That's the man, Donald Trump.
We went from a system where you couldn't give a student athlete anything. They could sell your jersey, you get nothing, to now, quarterback throws for 300 yards and they go see the coach, hey, I need more money. Give me more money from the club. Okay, I'll transfer. Or they get money and I don't want to play in that bowl game. Sorry, I'm just going to sit out. And I think that that's been bad, certainly for
Governor Ron DeSantis joining a discussion that includes legendary coach Nick Saban, Senator Ted Cruz in attendance, Outkicks Clay Travis, Tiger Woods, and many more on the future of college sports. We're going to continue to monitor this throughout the rest of our program, but still ahead. It's been 20 years, or at 20 years old rather, this man became the first hostage taken in Iran. Now he's retired Marine Sergeant Kevin Hermanning, and he joins me as the United States tries to take down this regime. He's next. Iranian regime. Our next guest knows that reality firsthand. Kevin Hermanning was just 20 years old, a Marine security guard, when he was taken hostage during the U.S. Embassy takeover in November of 1979. He became the youngest American held captive, imprisoned for 444 days. Earlier that year, the Shah fled Iran as protests escalated, clearing the way for Ayatollah Khomeini to seize power. Joining me now is retired Marine Sergeant Kevin Hermanning. Thank you so much for being with us here today. Thank you for your sacrifice and service to this country. It's an honor to have you with us here today. What did you learn? 444 days in and under the thumb of the regime that is now under attack by the United States of America.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, 47 years. President Reagan, Bush, Clinton, another Bush, Obama, first President Trump, Joe Biden. President Trump finally is willing to show the world the United States is not going to allow Americans to be pushed around anymore. Listen, we've seen so many people brutalized as a result of this regime that when I think about our time in captivity, I don't really think about my own personal experience, but rather, well, there was a man there who spent 425 days in solitary confinement, Will. Another guy had 3 of his teeth busted off at the roots of his gums after being beaten with rubber hoses during his interrogations. We've had men lose more than half of their body weight. And not everybody came home a whole person. For me, I'll never forget getting down on my knees in solitary confinement and praying so hard that someday not only would I get out of solitary confinement after a failed escape attempt, but also someday I would come home. And we were finally freed on the day that Ronald Reagan took office. And it was a different country that we came back to. And now I pray, of course, for the people who are serving in our armed forces now. I pray for those of our countrymen who are stranded overseas, working in the State Department. I'm wondering, what does the future hold? And I know everyone in the United States is praying for our troops and for Godspeed that this would come to an end.
We're already starting to feel a little bit at the gas station. I think Americans are down for it in the short term. We'll see how it plays out, and I think the president needs our support at this time.
Sergeant, I have less than a minute, but I have to ask you because very few Americans have direct experience and direct knowledge of who it is exactly that we are fighting. So what would you hope Americans know about this regime?
Well, this is a regime that does not respect human rights as far as women are concerned, gays and lesbians who are in an alternative lifestyle, even those who are of a different religion. And they certainly don't support Israel or the United States itself. I think that the president was doing the right thing. We needed to act in a preventive or preemptive manner, no question about it, to avoid that they would ever get nuclear weapons that they could use against our allies or against our country.
Sergeant Hermani, thank you so much.
I can enjoy anything I want because I